The NFL offseason is a time for hope and optimism, and as we all return to training camp, we all see the videos on Twitter, and it just gets everybody going, especially with this Thursday having the Texans and Bears play. Even though nobody from those starting teams is probably going to start for them, it's still football season, ladies and gentlemen. And with teams bringing in highly sought-after vets, promising rookies, and everything in between, most fans are feeling great about their favorite team's chances at this time of the year. But as we all know, things can change in the blink of an eye, and not every team will end up bringing in the results that they want. Take, for example, the 2023 New York Jets. There wasn't a more highly anticipated team last year than New York. But as we all know, of course, Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles in 4 plays, and an entire season went down the drain. So with all that being said, here are the top 5 scariest situations in the NFL this season. And the number 1 team might shock you. Now we're going to start with the New York Giants, who sort of feel like a franchise that's just honestly stuck in the mud. Last year with a miserable game 1 for the Giants after Daniel Jones missed most of the season with an assortment of injuries, and the team finished 6-11.
It is all on Daniel Jones. Is Daniel Jones going to be able to overcome his inability to stay on the field and show this New York Football Giants organization that I am the long-term solution in New York? You got a head coach and a play calling Brian Daboll who knows how to get the most out of quarterbacks, but damn it, you need to be able to stay on the field.
Even when Jones was on the field, though, the Giants were simply just bad, maybe even worse than when he was injured, and they only won 1 of his games that he did start. And before we do start talking about the scary stuff with this team and just what is possibly going to happen this year, we do have to recognize that they do have some pretty promising talent on that roster right now. Brian Daboll seems to be a solid play caller, and the combination of a rising star in Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence has the looks of a great defensive line. Plus, I mean, all the training camp videos with the addition of Malik Neighbors alongside Jalen Hyatt could make room for a much more menacing receiver room this year. So I mean, like, it's not completely like doom or gloom in New York, but I mean, it's definitely still concerning this year. And I mean, the scariest part about this whole thing is, well, it's Daniel Jones. Like, I mean, it's still hard to believe that after 4 seasons of Jones that were extremely mediocre at best and downright atrocious at times, the Giants gave him a 4-year, $140 million contract. Like, I mean, it's the most ridiculous move in recent memory, and now after maybe his worst season yet, the Giants are gearing up to run it back again with him. If New York were to part ways with Jones before the season, now that it's past the June 1st deadline, they would take on $47 million in dead cap and only $750,000 in cap savings. So basically, and now that we're in training camp, it doesn't look like that's going to be an option. The Giants do have a potential way out of their deal, though, with Jones before the 2025 season, where they'll save over $30 million by cutting him pre-June 1st and only taking on $11 million in cap dead space. But the more pertinent issue with the situation is the mindset of ownership and GM Joe Schoen. Based on the Jones contract and some of the other contract blunders they've had more recently with Saquon.
We lose Saquon, right? What's our identity going to be on offense now? And what's our plan to? What's the next step of that?
We got to upgrade the offensive line, and you're paying the guy $40 million. It's not to hand the ball off to a $12 million back.
Clearly, they are okay with mediocrity, and they really don't care about putting together a just high-level roster. And yes, while they can in the 2025 draft go and get another quarterback to fill in for Daniel Jones, they literally just wasted so much time on this guy. Like, just, and also talent, I guess, with when you think about like OBJ, Saquon, all those guys. Like, I mean, did we really need 6 years of Danny Dimes or Daniel Jones? I don't even think it's Danny Dimes anymore to really know that he was a bad quarterback. Like, I mean, the lack of just urgency on this organization is just palpable, and like, it's crazy to me that they are even just like still even talked about as like a mid-level team when they're just terrible. But let's move on to the next team. Now, the next team I want to talk about, and I want to stay inside the NFC East, is to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. First, it's important to clarify that the situation of the Cowboys in 2024 is nothing like the Giants. Dallas has put together a highly successful roster over the past 5 years. They've had elite talent all over the field, and they have a quarterback who has actually proven that he can be a difference maker. In fact, all of those reasons are actually why the situation that the Cowboys are facing is so scary. Like, I mean, despite all of their regular season success, those boys, they haven't been able to get it done in the playoffs as we've seen for the past couple of years.
Here's the truth about the Cowboys. They're content on mediocrity. They'd rather be relevant than remembered. The Cowboys, who are the most valued organization in all of North American sports, are the cheapest organization as of now in all of North American sports. They're not going to win without CeeDee Lamb. They can talk about the contract offers and whatnot. Without CeeDee Lamb, this team has absolutely no shot.
And with an aging core that they do have now and some contracts that they still do need to fill out, even though I think as of making this video, Dallas did just sign CeeDee Lamb, I do think that their Super Bowl window has completely closed now. Lamb, Prescott, and Parsons are the three big ones that need to be re-signed, and it's hard to imagine that they'll be able to bring all of them back. A recent report suggests that Jerry Jones is prioritizing CeeDee's contract over the others, and he should be set to become one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in NFL history, if not the highest.
No, in this particular situation, Dak really can't be the priority, and I'll tell you why. Dak will let them know when he's ready to sign or not, because he's getting his regardless. Either it's from Dallas or it's from someone else next year. And people can hate it all they want, but you better learn to accept it. Just like Ric Flair says, he is going to get his, and it's going to be huge. That's why they need to focus in on CeeDee, get him done, turn their attention to Micah, get him done, and move on.
And even if they do manage somehow to keep all three of them, they have to actually win in January. Jerry Jones is getting up there in age, and he certainly isn't the type to settle for less. If he doesn't believe this roster can make a Super Bowl run in the near future, there's a chance that he will make major changes next offseason. Honestly, I think the most notable one that we all see coming is that he's probably going to fire Mike McCarthy, but that also could mean moving on from Dak or even Micah Parsons, which would just be insane to move on from probably the best defensive player in the NFL. But whatever it is, it just means more moving parts that they have to fall in place. Next, let's talk about my personal favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, who are kind of in a similar situation to the Giants, but personally for me, I think the Saints are going to be one of the top 5 worst teams in the NFL this year. And for a matter of fact, I kind of hope they are, so we can at least just nuke everything and just start over, because God, it's bad. As we all know, the Saints signed Derek Carr, who I don't know why we did, to a 4-year, $150 million contract last offseason, and it still hurts me to say that, but season 1 was not all that they hoped, and Carr put up decent numbers in his first year in New Orleans, throwing for just under 3,900 yards and 25 touchdowns, but the team as a whole was not super successful, going 9-8 and missing the playoffs. Like I said, the roster it's not terrible, but it also is terrible at the same time. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed make for some interesting wideouts, and Alvin Kamara is still holding down the fort at running back, but it seems like they really aren't ready or really want to keep even Kamara around. The depth chart just feels like a bunch of players past their prime, like Carr, Kamara, and even Lattimore, who was one of my personal favorite players growing up, and young players who haven't even quite entered their prime yet. And almost after a decade of having some of the best offensive line play in the league, it seems like very seriously regressed as a unit in recent memory. So that begs the question, and honestly, I want to know too, what are the goals for the Saints this 2024 season? They are definitely not a Super Bowl caliber team, but at the same time, they also just signed Carr to this ridiculous contract, so they have to kind of go out there and try to win with this contract that he's on. Even if they do want to get out of his contract, the nearest time they can do that is in 2026, and even then, it's still going to be like a $30 million cap hit just to let him go. But now we get to the most infuriating question that the Saints have is, why the hell is Dennis Allen a coach for them? The dude thinks that field goals win games, but all right, never mind. I'm going to start going on a tangent and get really mad, so let's just get into this really quick. He was always the ultra conservative head coach pick, and while he probably won't be making major mistakes, it doesn't seem like he's really ready to elevate the team beyond the sum of its parts. Sure, the Saints aren't going to be an embarrassment of a franchise, but teams have to take risks to actually get better in the long run, and so far, New Orleans ownership hasn't shown any interest in doing that. We've seen terrible teams rebrand themselves quickly and blossom into contenders overnight, like the Houston Texans last year. And with that being said, maybe the scariest situation a franchise can be is being stuck with a middling roster like the Saints. But speaking of a very talented and kind of confusing roster at the same time is the fourth team that I want to touch on, and it's one of the most fascinating situations in the NFL. That's the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Niners are one of the model franchises of professional football with one of the most talented rosters, a genius head coach, and a GM that seems to not miss. And as one of the pioneers of the analytics era, the 49ers have been perennial contenders, and although they haven't won the big game in this iteration foundation of the franchise, their playoff success speaks for itself. But again, the reason why this situation is so scary is because of the impending contracts that they have to sign in the coming years. First and foremost, the Brandon Ayuk contract saga has been all over the news this offseason, with clips even surfacing of him speculating other teams he may end up playing for in September.
But here's John Lynch and Ayuk talking, yeah, we're going to figure it out. And then Ayuk walks off the field or past these video people rolling, almost gets taken out by a teammate, boom, right there. Almost gets taken out by a guy. And then he heads off the field. So I wonder if John Lynch said, hey, let's go meet, let's go chat. Is he going back inside? Did he say, hey, don't get off the field, we don't need distraction? Like, I do wonder about the entirety of it all and how it ends up, AJ.
For now, though, it still seems most likely that they will bring Ayuk back, but it's hard to say for sure. Assuming they do get the deal done with the young wideout, which would be the best case scenario for the Niners, that's a lot of their available cap space for the next few years accolades to just one player.
And Justin Jefferson at the top of the market. The Brandon Ayuk's going to say, I want something like that, right? I don't think the 49ers are going to get to that range. But the other sort of data point you got to keep in mind is that Deebo Samuel is making $24 million per year. And Jeremy kind of alluded to this. If all of a sudden Brandon Ayuk gets $29 million per year in a long-term contract, what's Deebo going to say next?
Brock Purdy is soon to be due for a new contract as well, because I mean, his $1 million salary just isn't going to cut it for that much longer, and he will get paid an extremely high amount this next offseason. That means San Francisco will likely have to part ways with some impactful veterans who are also in need of extensions, like George Kittle, Javarius Ward, and their strong safety, just to name a few. The worry here is that while they definitely aren't going to be bad, will they actually be able to recreate the success of the last 2 seasons that came oh so close to the Lombardi? Like, I mean, in a lot of scenarios, teams who seem to always be on the cusp have a hard time recovering after falling just short of a championship, and it's incredibly difficult to live up to such high expectations year after year. Christian McCaffrey just turned 28, which isn't exactly young in running back years, and making him the workhorse of the offense only becomes more and more taxing on his body each season. And I know while their window likely won't be closed for a decent amount of time, they surely have to make this year count though. And I mean, even if they don't, what does that actually mean for Kyle Shanahan? Like, I mean, this is a scary season for him as well, I think, because it's fair to argue that any other coach who has fallen short in the playoffs so many times like he has would have already been fired by now. Like, remember, Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they fumbled their 28-3 Super Bowl lead against the Patriots. So I think it's safe to say that the pressure is definitely on for Kyle and the Niners. Now, the final team that I want to discuss is the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have an interesting battle at the quarterback spot right now after bringing in Minshew on a $25 million deal to take the starting job from Aiden O'Connell. I personally do like this move to try and go get Minshew and kind of maybe fire up O'Connell as well, because I mean, just how do you not like Minshew after all of the antics that he's done over the past couple of years while he's been in the league? But at the same time, it was really puzzling kind of to not see the Raiders trade up on draft night in one of the most talented draft classes we've seen in recent years to go and get a quarterback. And I know Vegas can always take a quarterback in 2025, but Carson Beck, Shadur Sanders, Quinton Ewers, and Jalen Milroe aren't quite the same caliber as the top prospects in 2024, especially when you bring in the names like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Another big problem that's arising for Las Vegas that makes their situation very scary is the unhappiness of Davante Adams. As we've all seen, Adams was mic'd up last season for the new Netflix show Receiver, which documented day-to-day of several of the top wideouts in the game, and on multiple occasions, he was seen on the sideline showing incredible frustration with the team.
I gotta get the out of here before I lose my life. I ain't never been hit this many times in my career. Every game I get up. Oh, God. This shit is pathetic, bro. Just threw the ball, man. Tired of this bullshit.
Obviously, losing will make any elite competitor like Adams angry, but outright saying Jimmy Garoppolo had to be benched in order for us to have a chance down the stretch and in order for me to remain a Raider is something else entirely. Like, I mean, very few players in the league have the amount of power to openly call for their starting quarterback to be benched, but Davante Adams is one of them, and for good reason. The real difficulty and scariness of the situation lies in that they actually do have top-end talent on the roster. Between Adams and Max Crosby at least, just that it seems like another one of those scenarios where they can't build a good enough roster around those players to contend. Like, I mean, honestly, it reminds me of Khalil Mack's tenure with the Raiders. He was a Hall of Fame talent and Oakland could never put it together to even get as much as a playoff win for him. Max Crosby is still just 27, so there's still plenty of time for Vegas to build a strong defense around him, but they need to get out of the mediocrity limbo and find a quarterback with the potential to take them to new heights. Antonio Pierce seems like a great coach, is an awesome motivator of men, but he's not going to be able to out-scheme opponents on offense, so they need to find some serious talent. I mean, maybe the worst case scenario for the Raiders fans this year is they do go 9-8 and ultimately land a later draft pick, only making it more difficult to find their QB of the future. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think of my list. Honestly, the 5 teams that I gave: New York, Dallas, the Niners, the Saints, and the Raiders, honestly, for me, have some of the scary situations coming into this year. And if we don't see them win some games this year, or at least like break even at least, or one game below 500 or above 500, we're gonna see some firing of head coaches and some quarterbacks even released, I think, that may shock some people in the offseason. But as we all know, give me your record predictions of each of these teams down in the comment section below. Did I leave a team off this list also? And if you have not, make sure you join my Discord. We are doing a pick'em pool that I'm releasing this week. Also, we are running an NCAA Dynasty that we are going to be uploading this week. So make sure you join in that Discord. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next one.